Broadcasting from the Vancouver Convention Center in British Columbia, Solutions Review is on location at the FME User Conference 2022, the peak of data integration. Brought to you by Safe Software.
I'm Doug Atkinson here in Vancouver, British Columbia at the FME User Conference 2022, and happy to be joined by an FME customer, Tim Albert, GIS coordinator at Victoria International Airport, which is what we flew into on our way out here from Boston.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Nice little airport.
Seems to be working well.
Yeah, it's tiny. That's okay, I like it that way.
Yeah, well, so we always love talking to customers, but before we get into kind of the implementation that you're currently engaged with, tell me a little bit about how you first became aware of FME, because you've had a long history with it.
Yeah, it was when I was actually back in Ottawa, and I was doing some sort of part-time work for a company called Northwood Geoscience, which was developing another piece of software for map info. So the guys who know GIS, this is the old stuff. And someone from FME a sales guy came and pitched it to them, and they brought me into the room, and I look at this thing and I said, this is awesome.
That was 98?
That was 98, yeah. It was like incredible. You can do that. It was all script based, so it was all just code on a screen and stuff, but I'd been working with AutoCAD since 92 doing GIS and bringing in other stuff. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I've been waiting for. So it was really awesome to see it first. I didn't get a chance to use it right away. I had to wait until I had a project later on with another consulting company, and then we pulled it in. I used it in about 2000 when they brought in the user interface, and I started using it for everything I could. It was QCing, setting up jobs. It was awesome.
And so tell me more about that. So how do you use it? I mean, that's because we've heard we heard a lot about the spatial and utilities and governments, but airport we haven't heard the airport story.
So back then I wasn't working for an airport.
Oh, right.
Okay,
right.
So back then, up until 2016, I was consulting.
Yep.
And then in 2016 I made the switch and I started working for the Victoria Airport directly. So if previous to that I had worked as a consultant.
Oh, so you were using it across a broad swath?
A swath of, I worked on things for the Indian and Northern Affairs Canada. I worked for Canadian Heritage, I worked with statistics data, I worked for geologists, I worked for Geological Survey of Canada. This is all consulting jobs.
Sure.
A lot of municipalities, watershed organizations, almost everything. And I'd find a way to use FME to either move data across between different systems, or I found it easier to do the processing I needed to do. So they'd give me data, and I'd look, this is a piece of junk, and I'd fix it up for them. And so, but using FME to move it into the system that they needed. And yeah, I just found so many different uses for it. It's been really incredible. Once I started at the Victoria Airport, I actually started as the consultant back in 2004. So I was there one day a week, and the company I worked for at that point had just won the contract to create a web GIS for them. So to move their data from their old microstation CAD files from the 90s into GIS and to a web GIS. So the first thing I did was FME. So that's going to move it in and automate it, because they were still maintaining the data in the CAD files. So every time it changed, we just automate it to the WebGIS, and it just all grew from there.
So what is your? I'll tap into your consulting history.
Yeah.
What's your advice to somebody who's trying to get to the next level of data integration? Maybe they've got some sort of homebrew thing going on, or some other kind of lower end point solution. I mean, when you're talking about something like an FME platform, what's your advice for them to be thinking about, or to get over if they have some sort of head trash about, they can't get there because of whatever?
Oh, so that maybe the solution they have isn't worked or is working, but it's this system to this system.
Or it's just the way they've always done it. Yeah, you know the drill.
Yeah, FME provides so much flexibility and a common way to do things. So all the tools you get to use in the middle, it doesn't matter what comes in, it doesn't matter what goes out. And that's kind of a model for not just your solution, the problem you're facing, but the other problems you have. And usually what happens is once someone starts using FME, and they get past that learning curve, which is a little steep, their mind opens up and goes, oh my goodness, I can do that?
Yeah, right. When do you see those lights come on?
Not too long after you get through your first one. Once you connect two things together and you put something in between, you're like, oh, well, what else can I put in between to change it and to do it? And so it has helped me to be able to use at the airport now. I just hold on to a little tiny bit of the data, and I let the people who actually manage the information deal with their stuff. And I pull from it and display it in a common environment. But I use FME to pull from all the little other places. And they come to me, they have no idea what GIS is.
Interesting.
They haven't got a clue. But
And
they know their
they
stuff.
don't need to know.
They don't need to know. They know their stuff, and they know what they want it to, how they want people to be able to see it and get to it. So I give them that little connection so they can do that.
That's great.
Yeah, it's quite useful.
And you've been doing that for 6 years? 5 years?
7 years. But I started this 1 day a week for like 8-9 years before that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they were trying to hire me.
So it's
right
clearly working.
Oh, yeah.
Because they've just pulled you into
to keep
a
it going.
full-time gig.
But honestly, they have no idea what I do. So it's really good. They just know what it looks like, it works in the end. And now the guy who cuts the grass on the airfield, he can pull up his phone and say, oh yeah, I'm in zone this, I have to move over to this zone. But, you know,
Is that really happening?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
It's awesome.
That's great.
It's pretty amazing. They use the maintenance guys, the electricians, the guys who handle leases, the finance, everybody uses it all the time.
So I was talking to Don and Dale yesterday, and one of the things that they said to me is that they always felt like they'd solved the hard problem first with the spatial piece, and now everything else is like, you know, we're just kind of following the demands of what the customer is asking for, and it's actually a lot easier for them because of that first bit. I'm curious to get your perspective on kind of how you've seen the evolution that they've been building in the time that you first, you know, became aware of it back in '98. I mean, it's been quite a run that you've seen.
Yeah, I have at that same company that I got introduced to. I saw what a programmer was like. I never really understood, you know, someone who's a programmer, what type of personality does it take to do that? They're nuts. I never wanted to be a programmer. So as soon as FME came up with a user interface that we could do it graphically in a non-programming manner,
no code.
I was hooked. That was it. That's the part that once they did that and solved the spatial issue, because there's a lot more complexity in data, in spatial data, than exists in most databases in raster.
Oh, I don't think people truly understand.
No, because it's, you know, well, it's just a point in the line, right? And I get the statement I get when I try and tell people what I do for work is I do maps on computers. They say, like Google Map, right? I said, yeah, kinda. Well, isn't it all mapped already? And you go,
I know. We've talked to cartographers who are telling us all these things that they're working on. It's like, yeah, there's still plenty of things that need mapping.
Well, and it's the change.
Yeah.
That's the thing that people don't really understand.
Right.
It's the change.
Right.
And
Everything's changing.
everything's changing.
Physically.
Physically changing. And there's a lot of knowledge in the background on how you actually get the point on the map in the right spot, because things change over time.
Right.
So people don't understand that the land is actually moving.
That's true.
And there's changes in technology that help you understand how things are different from what they were in the past. And
right.
So an Excel spreadsheet or a simple database, it's a breeze compared to what you have to do to understand really where the geography sits and how you display it. And adding the database in, well, that's simple. So yeah, they're very much, by conquering that first little spatial piece and GIS, what they've been able to do is take the structure that GIS developed in order to live, and they're able to apply that to all these other fields of information, fields of work, and sort of take the structure and make it work for the other ones that were unstructured.
Yeah.
It makes it much easier to deal with.
Well, so I'm curious. I mean, it's an incredibly challenging time to be in the transportation business, or at least in the transportation infrastructure, particularly around air travel, given the past 3 years or so.
Yeah.
What do you see as opportunities in that sector going forward around the use of data, how it may impact the lives of everybody as they're moving through?
So that's an interesting question, and it's a little. When people talk about an airport, they think airplanes.
Yep.
We don't fly planes.
Right.
So
Good point.
Our only concern is around managing the land, around managing the airports, around managing the terminals. So our customer side, planes are like the buses you get on after
Right.
your meal. Like it doesn't really matter to us where the bus. We want to make sure there's a place for the bus to park, and it has all the stuff to service itself. But we don't fly the planes. So our looking forward is more around the customer experience in the building.
Right.
Do we have enough parking? Is the parking located in this? Are people going to still drive cars? My view around what's coming would be more around this Internet of Things, the connection of where things are, what is happening, and reporting that back to management so they have a consistent view of things. A big thing we're working on now is sort of environmental management.
Yep.
And the sustainability. And the big questions that I'm getting asked is, well, how much water do we use, Tim? And I'm like, well, we don't know because we're not collecting the data points yet. So that's one thing we're starting to work on. What areas do we irrigate? What's our carbon footprint as far as how much gas we're using or electricity are we using?
And once you measure all that, you can really have a significant impact on changing that.
Yeah, it's all about, first off, getting the data, getting a baseline, and then you see, well, if I make it just change, what difference is it going to make? If you don't have that, who knows? Maybe somebody will tell you it's going to make this much of a difference, switching to LED lights, for instance.
Right.
But if you've never measured what it was before, how are you really going to know? Except by your electrical bill.
And so is that really what needs to happen at kind of that base level, is to take the baseline, capture that baseline data?
And then keep it going. And then you can start to see what the changes you're making, the impact it is having. Because us in the data world, we can't make the change.
And ultimately, that's what you're being asked to start to think about.
Yeah.
Is how to have an impact, like a measurable impact on sustainability.
Yeah. How to get the information into a way that you can use it as part of a sustainability plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what do you get out of a conference like this? I'm curious. Like you're Did you present?
Yep.
Yeah, of
Presented
course,
yesterday, I'll present tomorrow.
Because you're like a great example of an end user really making it happen. But I'm curious what you get out of it.
Well, this morning I had a chance to talk with Mark Stokes, and we were getting into a conversation. I asked him a question around ArcGIS Online data, and a very technical question. And he said, well, the guys you should talk to are sitting right over there.
Right.
So I just got up, I walked, sat down, and asked them the question. Like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I got the answer. That's the type of thing that it's really hard to find those people through any other method.
Yeah, you can't replicate that sort of...
That sort of sit down and, oh yeah, they're just sitting over there. Oh,
impromptu,
awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Conversation that matters.
Yeah.
And really moves the needle.
Yeah.
In a virtual environment, there's just no way to replicate that.
The other thing that's really nice is because of the long history I've had with SAFE, getting to see the people that I've worked with for
you go all the way back.
Yeah, so it's been awesome to talk to them and touch base and see them in person and just the personal relationship.
Well, they've got to be thrilled to be able to have you as a client.
Well, I don't know, but I don't give them that much money. So.
Well, you're certainly a great advocate.
Yeah, I know. I enjoy it. Tell everyone I can about how much fun it is to use, because that's the other thing, is the culture of the company. FME is in stark contrast to many other
Honestly,
companies.
I've been absolutely struck by the positivity
Yeah.
in the company. I mean, and you can tell where it comes from. I mean, it comes from the top down. I mean, those guys they're super nice.
And I think they made a mention in the plenary. Says, I don't know what it is, but Safe Software has just got the nicest people as customers.
Yeah, no, I know. They're very deferential and complimentary, but it really starts, I think, with those two guys.
It does, for sure. But the community is quite amazing.
Yeah, and growing. That was another thing.
And generous.
Yeah.
So everything that I do in FME is stolen.
That's great.
I didn't come up with most of it. So, so it's awesome.
Outstanding. Well, I can see you're wearing your FME socks, so
yeah, I mostly they're a little too loud for me. Usually
you're
the
on
other
board.
years. So this year I thought, well, I'm going to try them and see. And I think they work today.
yeah, no, absolutely. I love it. Well, thanks very much for swinging by. We appreciated it. It was a great conversation.
Thanks very much.
You bet.